Welcome to the Culture Bar, an arts and culture podcast series brought to you by Harrison Parrott. In this Journey Journals mini-series, colleagues from across HarrisonParrott Group will tell you about their career journeys and share insights and advice about having a career in the music sector. Today, we're talking to Teodora Masi. Hi, Dora. How are you?
Hello. Good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So to start it off, what is the best piece of advice that anyone has ever given you? It does not have to be work related, just in life.
Relax.
Yeah, that's
Relax.
brilliant advice.
Yeah, I've been told very many times to relax. Probably was taking things way too seriously. And so over the years, I learned to relax, or at least it's a process. Let's put it this way.
Perfect. No, I think that's great advice. I think I need to take that as well. Like, it's so simple, but so important, because what can you get done if you're not relaxed? Okay, so you work as an artist manager or artist director at HarrisonParrott, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what led you to this career, or like what education path and what other jobs led you to be here at HP?
It all started when I was 6 years old. That's probably something that you get a lot. I started taking piano lessons when I was 6, and I come from a relatively musical family in the sense that my mom had studied piano. I grew up with a piano in the house. Grandma, although I never met her, had studied piano. She has an autograph by Ottorino Respighi because she went to one of his concerts, I learned.
Wow.
Yeah. It was just a thing to do, a good part of any child's education is to have some exposure to classical music and an instrument. So that's what I did, together with my brother, who's older than me. And I never really thought of making a career out of it until I did an internship shortly before the end of high school. And I completely found it was an opera house in Verona, which is a big Roman amphitheater, open air, where they do a summer opera festival. I was offered the opportunity to intern there, and I really loved it. I loved everything that was going on stage, but especially backstage, so much, from the stagehands, the costume people, the wigs were my favorite. I wish I could have worn them all. And I remember Maestro Zeffirelli was there with his golden retriever, and then Maestro Daniel Oren was there with his, I don't remember the breed of the dog. At the time, I wanted to become a veterinarian, you see, and I had pre-signed up for school. And a singer, I remember, telling me, oh, working in the arts is pretty much like having to deal with animals. It was very funny. I cannot possibly comment on that after working in this business for 15 years now, but so it was very funny, but it made me really fall in love with this world. And I thought, you know what, I'll turn my career around. Instead of going to many concerts and working with pets, I will have lots of pets and work in classical music.
That's fantastic.
I never really wanted to be an artist myself. Maybe I wanted for a very short period of time, because for all the wrong reasons, I keep saying. I was a very angry teenager at the time, and I saw the figure of the orchestra conductor, as someone that everyone had to listen to. And I wanted to be listened to. So I rocked up a conservatory and I said, how do I become an orchestra conductor? And they told me, oh, darling, you have to do 7 years of composition and then 3 years of conducting. Fine, I'll do that. You can imagine my parents' face when I told them, and I said, all right, babe, you do a real degree at university, and then on your free time, you do everything music that you want to do. So I signed up for business school, specializing into arts management. And then on the side, I signed up for conservatory, and I did my 7 years of composition. I got to the end of the 6th year to then realize I was not talented and I wasn't really that interested. I mean, it was all interesting, and meanwhile, I kept, taking piano lessons. The more I knew about what is required of an artist, the more I admired them. And at the same time, I realized it was just not a life path that I wanted for myself. But I still wanted to serve classical music in one way with my skills. And I did enjoy business school, not so much the accounting part of it, although yeah, I didn't mind it, but the statistics and microeconomics and all that. But I did enjoy project management. I did enjoy organization. I did enjoy all of those things. And I thought, what can I do? I did a master's at New York University. That was probably life-changing, specializing in performing arts administration, because before I had done a degree in arts administration, so visual arts and performing arts, and I narrowed it down to performing arts. That's how I came to working in the arts, in music. I did an internship at the Metropolitan Opera in the HR department, and they asked me to stay on to work there. And then my visa didn't work out, so I had to come back to Europe, and I worked for about a year. I started artist management in Italy. I worked for 2 vocal agencies there for a total of about a year, traveling around and exploring the world. So London called, and I worked as an assistant, and I made my way up at IMG Artists. For about 5 years, and then it was time for a change for various reasons, and I came over to HarrisonParrott, and I've been there since. So it's a little over 7 years.
Wow. And you're still enjoying it here, I'm guessing, since you're here?
Yes, absolutely. Most days I like being an artist, an artist manager.
What advice would you give to someone who is in the middle of like an education like yours and then finds out that's not really what they want to do? Because I pivoted careers myself. Would you say that it's worth following your passion?
I would say so, yes. You know, when we were at business school, everyone used to make fun of us because the business school I went to is the most, prestigious one in Italy. It's called Bocconi, and, it's up there. And everyone across our corridor, we had the class of finance, and next door we had the law students, and they kept making fun of us. Oh, you study the arts? Really? What is that? Well, we proved to them that we can draw, we can play, and we can manage.
Amazing.
And we were having a lot of fun in the process. Half of the class now still works in the arts, across their arts, media, but we are the happiest, I think.
Yeah, no, I can agree to that. I really understand where you're coming from as well, because I myself did psychology for 4 years. I did a master's in psychology and then realized that this proper job, as you also said, wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I wanted to do something more creative, and well, I ended up here. So I understand, and it's really interesting, and I feel like you will live a happier life if you enjoy your job. And I couldn't imagine doing something statistical or like research based in psychology now, which is what I set off to do in the first place. So.
But you have to find out, like I found out that I was not a core an artist, but I still liked to work in this field.
And you're often like directed by your parents or like people around you to be like, oh, it's not a real job. It's not a real job.
Oh yes, I don't think my parents don't. I think for the first 5 to 6 years of my career, they thought I was just going to concerts and not, and just said, but is that a job? Like, what do you actually do? So when I started describing to them the day, what a typical, there is no typical day, but what it could look like, then, okay.
What is one thing that you wish that people understood better about the job that you do?
How many things go into artist management? I think there's a misconception that it's just booking dates for the artists.
Yeah.
There is so much more to it than that. It also depends, obviously, it depends on the artists you're working with. The work that you do for a very established artist, like my conductor, Paavo Järvi, is completely different from the work that I'm doing on my younger conductor, Neil Venditti, and it's completely different from what you do for an instrumentalist, or in case of our colleagues in the voice department, what they do. It's still artist management, but also because of the cycle of what the artist does. So conductor stays for a week in a place, generally speaking, while a soloist is there in the same, if it's a solito da concerto, he goes the day before of the concert, the rehearsal, and then the dress rehearsal, and then the concert, and then goes off. So, and then there are chamber music projects for instrumentalists, and then there are recital tours, and all of this aspects of the artist's activity that require a lot of organization, a lot of strategic thinking. I just had a call with another one of my young conductors who is going to have lots of important debuts in 2 seasons time. And we were talking about which repertoires for which orchestra, in which territory, what's their tradition, what is best to present yourself with, what is the smartest way to go, how much freedom have you got, and present yourself in the best possible way so that they will reinvite you, and what are your strengths at the same time. So it's all, do we want a soloist, do we not want a soloist, and in that case, what is there are so many aspects that need so many details as well that go into helping an artist, that it requires constant communication with them, and there is no decision, at least this is my policy, and more in general, HarrisonParrott's policy. We don't take decisions on our own. It's always discussed and agreed upon with the artist in question, because it's their career at the end of the day. We are in the background, and we help, we open doors, we shield them, we protect them, and at the same time, at the end of the day, they are the ones on the podium. So they have to be comfortable with what they do. And then, building rest periods, building study periods, building into the diary warm-ups, especially for the younger generation of artists. If they have an important debut, they might want to do it before, looking for somewhere out of the spotlights where they can master the pieces before they do it. And this is just, the visible part of things, to the repertoires, the dates and everything. But the invisible part then goes into fixing the date, and then fixing the rehearsal schedule, and making sure that there is enough rehearsal time, making sure that the cachets, the financial conditions make sense. And oftentimes, especially these days, the blanket is always shorter and shorter. And it's important that there is a fair compensation, and also that the expenses are covered as much as possible. And then you have to deal with contractual details. So some countries require some specific type of contracts, some others different as well. And there are so many aspects that it's a constant conversation about details. There is there isn't a lot of creative work, I must say. It's a lot of admin and process, because what we do, we try to take away from the artist the weight of having to think through all of these things, all of these details, all of this, for example, if there is an invitation from the United States, and immediately 1 week and the following week, there's an invitation from an orchestra in Europe, you have to make sure that he can actually make it there in time.
Exactly.
And then you count for jet lag. So if the artist feels jet lag, if he doesn't, who cares? He can walk from the airport straight into rehearsal, for example. Although if it's January or winter, you have to be careful about flights cancellation. So you want to build in some time. It's all these things that we pre-digest. That's an image that I like to think. We pre-digest all of this information on behalf of the artist, and then we present them with the options and what we think is the best way, and then they make a decision.
That is incredible, because I feel like that is such a huge mental load on them to have to do that, as well as concentrate on playing the music. Yes,
that's what we try as much as possible to take off their shoulders, but it requires a constant communication anyway, because the decision still rests with them, what they feel comfortable. Is it too much? Is it too little? Is it too,
It's like musician 1, musician 2, they are a person, they have their needs as well when they're touring and everything. So it's,
if they have family, they might want to build in some, specific time frames where they have to be home. If they have, children, they might want to take them to school. You know, you have to build in their birthdays or
Yeah.
the first day in school, or you know that week they know they can get the kids out of school, and therefore that's, you know, no matter what invitation comes in, they're just not going to accept it. It's yeah, it's not just about the music, and sometimes I wonder if it's at all about the music.
You are really involved,
understand.
like, in their life, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And I feel like that also comes with so much experience and so much trust from your side as well, which is really incredible to hear, because you put on so many different hats trying to help this person and this musician, right? So you work really personally with them. Then what would you say, when you work with an artist, are the 3 core values that you always hold yourself to?
Good communication,
Yeah.
transparency, and a mix of passion and dedication.
That sounds very
I don't know if
reasonable.
communication is a value, but I find that's, you know,
Good communication is. I would say so.
That's the foundation. It's not just about the artists, you know, it's also about the institutions, the orchestras and the theaters that we are in constant contact with. They are also colleagues in a way, at least to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are conversations that are very delicate because some artists feel very strongly about a project, but that project, maybe it's not possible because it's been done the year before, or because someone else is doing it in that season, or because someone else in the city is doing it. Especially big cities, you know, they have multiple orchestras and projects and things. It's a series of negotiations and compromises that go. So communication is absolutely key.
And maybe for them also, they know the area they're wanting to perform, and they have insights about their own work. So you got to know them before you can help them with anything, I guess. So that makes perfect sense. And so you've been in the industry you've been at HP for 7 years. How would you say it's changed since you started? Or has it changed at all? It might not have.
Well, it has and it hasn't. I mean, there are colleagues in this company who have been here for 30 years, so they can see a longer span of what I can, because in a way it's fairly long, but it's not so long in this business, because some changes happen in a slower way. You know, it takes a little bit of time to. The major and the pandemic especially has created a twist into everything. We're still kind of living on the tail end of it, and we're kind of seeing and checking what is the consequence. So, for example, one of the consequences of the pandemic that I found is that a lot of orchestras have grown accustomed to have shorter programs. Although that there was a tendency before to try shorter performances, like 1 hour, rush hour concerts, a crush, and, you know, 6 p.m., trying to experiment with different kinds of formats, especially, I think, to appeal and to open up to the audience more, and to welcome more people to come to the concert, to make ourselves more open and more welcoming, and trying different ways to say we're not, you know, the stuffy with big stuff, you know, big dusty wig people that we are perceived to be. We make cool stuff, you know, we really do. Come and, you know, try us out. So that's probably what I've been experiencing ever since I used to go to concerts with my mom, and I was allowed to stuffed animals at the time on my laps, and you had to sit very quietly.
Oh, that is so sweet.
It was very interesting. I was religiously quiet and everything. Now there are some orchestras who are offering the opportunity to film pieces of the concert, although that's you know, that's debatable. That's big. It's a big thing, you know, to post on social media. It's kind of impossible not to follow where the rest of the world is going, and classical music is no exception. So from trying to use iPads instead of paper scores on the music stands, although in China they turn off, in some theaters, I remember I had this experience of one of my artists using the iPad, and all of a sudden someone turned on the jammer, so that people in the audience, apparently in China back then, were still taking phone calls during concerts, and to avoid that, there was a jammer of the network, but that interfered with the pedal of the iPad of the artist on stage. So that was not pleasant.
Oh no, poor thing. Well, that is how they change pages, isn't it? They have like a pedal
Yes,
on the
they have a
floor.
little
Yeah, I
pedal
was
and they do it.
wondering. Because then you
And
don't
that,
have to, you know, you see violinists flicking the page. It must be
yeah.
easier to just have an iPad, unless they turn your connection off, of
Yes,
course.
that was a discovery. Let's put it this way.
Oh.
And the other way it has changed is, at least I feel, is that the possibilities of traveling have
Mhm.
become infinite. You can do a round the world trip like 3 times in a week. And some
Yeah.
artists have embraced it. And if they could cut themselves in 2, they would play 2 concerts on the same day on the 2 opposite side of the world. And some feel overwhelmed by all of this and don't want to do it. Mind you, there is a growing awareness about the impact that we have with our travels on the environment, and so that's also in latest year being part of the conversation, and we are trying to figure out how to deal with it, because on one side it's important that an artist is seen and is performing across the globe every season, everywhere at the same time, and orchestras are touring, you know, that's what kind of keeps their profile up and prestige and everything. On the other side, obviously, this has a big impact.
Yeah.
And also us as managers, we travel a lot to see our artists, important debuts, and, you know, just be with them. But it's hard. It's a trade-off. I'm not gonna lie. It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
We're trying hard to rationalize and reduce. So if we have 4 or 5 artists, for example, in the same city in the space of a week, maybe one of us is going to go and spend a week there rather than having 5 of us going at the same time.
Yeah.
Also, orchestras will get tired of seeing, you know, all of this HarrisonParrott managers all the time. but that's something that we're trying to do. With artists, we're trying to rationalize the way that they travel as well for their own health, but also trying to be conscious. Some artists have decided to stop flying, and we support that. So they will travel only to places where they can reach by train, for example.
Wow. I respect
and
that.
that's absolutely respectable. And so we plan according to what they want. If there is a North America tour and the artist is based in Asia, for example, then we would try to make sure that the routing of the trip makes sense, so they don't have to go backwards on themselves, and they do it once or twice a year, and they don't keep going back and forth like you know. So that's a big conversation. Another one is access and inclusivity and access. We have an internal group that keeps discussing this, and it's very important to us that we are aware of, you know, we have training of bias and conscious biases. This is a big thing that we try to be aware ourselves of, how we are handling the information that we receive, you know, as human beings, and to be aware of how that filters through to every aspect of our lives, including our work. So the way that we select, that we sign artists, we're trying to be careful about being aware of whether we are selecting people who are like us just because that's what we are comfortable with. Or, you know, all the prejudices, gender, ethnicity, it's so, there is so much of that that is trying to be addressed, not just by us, but, you know, across the board, across the field, because it does touch classical music as well. It runs very deep, and I personally feel it very, very close to my heart. And I'm the first one, you know, to raise my hand and say, I'm probably getting this completely wrong. Mea culpa. But we're trying to look at ourselves within the company as well, through our foundation, because I think the common denominator is access. You won't get the top talent unless you grow it from the very bottom, from the kids who start. I was lucky enough to have parents who exposed me to classical music at age 6, but not everyone is. So through our foundation, we are trying to do that. We are trying to reach out to schools and everything, and to offer our knowledge. Our artists who come, to London, they might participate to classes and things like that, and expose. And many of our artists are also very much involved in education, because that's the basis. That's what's going to fill theaters in the future. The future generations are now.
Thank you for listening to Journey Journal's mini-series brought to you by Harrison Parrott. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow us or rate the show.